As folks continue to file out of St. Paul's Cathedral there following the prayer service for the Queen. Let's bring in Duncan Larcombe now, former royal editor of The Sun and author of Prince Harry, The Inside Story. Sir, thank you so much for joining us here today. I'm sure you have many thoughts to share. First, a bit from what we heard from King Charles at the top of the last hour in his first address to his country. Listen.
As the Queen herself did with such unswerving devotion, I too now solemnly pledge myself, throughout the remaining time God grants me, to uphold the constitutional principles at the heart of our nation. I shall endeavor to serve you with loyalty, respect, and love, as I have throughout my life.
Really, they're reflecting, Duncan, on the commitment of service to the nation that his mother, Queen Elizabeth II, made when she ascended to the throne, saying that promise of lifelong service, I renew to you all today. Your reaction so far?
Well, look, this was a day of first, really. It was the most important day of Prince Charles's life, as he's now King Charles. And it is a real moment in history to hear what he's got to say. That didn't sound like the old Prince Charles to me. I've interviewed him several times. I've traveled the world with him. I've spoken to him many, many times. He sounded a little bit more regal, like someone who had come out from somebody else's shadow, and here he was, delivering a speech that he has had 70 years to prepare for. So it was really, I mean, I'm grateful that I'm on here watching it all with you, because wow, what a moment that was in the history of the British royal family.
Yeah, I think, Duncan, that there was a lot of question as to what kind of King Charles would be. And then in that inaugural address to the UK and indeed to the world, he seemed to show, as you just mentioned, a regal nature that I think has probably assuaged a lot of fears that people have as to whether or not he would be up to the task. He seems like he would be quite up to the task. The question that a lot of people have, though, is how might the monarchy change under Prince Charles? The Daily Mail had some ideas of things that may change under Charles's reign. And let's put those up on the screen, if we could. One of the things would be to turn Balmoral into a museum to honor the Queen. Buckingham Palace might become more open to the public. He may revamp lavish apartments to smaller living quarters. He himself might adopt a flat above the shop in Buckingham Palace, if you will. And then there was speculation that maybe in the future only heirs to the throne and their immediate families would receive full titles, public financial support, and police protection. And then you wonder about his advocacy work. You know, he said that he wouldn't be able to spend as much time with the charities that he's become famous for over the past few decades, taking on this new title. But his politics and his advocacy work are well known. And will that permeate his reign? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And I thought there were a lot of clues in there, as you suggest, in that speech, because what King Charles is telling us, apart from all the stuff that we would expect, a moving treatment to his mother, but he's telling the public how it will change. OK, let me start. Kate, I've covered her now for 19 years. She's been waiting, and today, just now, she became a princess for the first time, Princess Catherine. William has also inherited the titles that come with the Scottish in Scotland, as the Duke of Rothesay, and then the Duke and Duchess of Cornwall. What does that mean for William? Well, it means a pay rise of $25 million a year, wow. And it means that he now has a land portfolio of $1.3 billion US. And that's not all. Obviously, the mention of Harry, maybe that's a separate issue. But we now know that Prince Charles, now he is king, does not necessarily want to draw the attention of the royal family onto the others. His brother, Prince Andrew, rather unsurprisingly, not mentioned. But nor was his sister, Princess Anne, nor was, I believe, Prince George. The focus was on a slim, his role as the monarch, supported fundamentally by, I'll say it, this is the first time I've ever said it, the Prince and Princess of Wales, wow. William and Kate. Wow. So lots there.
Let that sink in. And as the author of the book, Prince Harry, I'll play out this sound of King Charles in his speech just about an hour ago, specifically on his sons, William and Harry. Listen.
As my heir, William now assumes the Scottish titles which have meant so much to me. Today, I am proud to create him Prince of Wales. With Catherine beside him, our new Prince and Princess of Wales will, I know, continue to inspire and lead our national conversations. I want also to express my love for Harry and Meghan as they continue to build their lives overseas.
Duncan, a lot of reaction to that, and obviously a lot will be said for the way he approached Harry and Meghan, obviously with so much that has happened since they wed. But what was your reaction?
I am in no doubt in my mind what keep doing it. See, it's so new. What King Charles meant. He was extending an olive branch there to his son, slightly wayward son, shall we say, in terms of the only fly in the Chardonnay of an otherwise momentous day for him. He mentioned his son, Harry. He talked of love. He talked there as a father. He has now got the top job. The Queen was the boss. Now Charles is. And he has to sort out this friction between Harry and Meghan and him as king and actually his son, William, as heir. That was his way of acknowledging Harry. You do exist. And he mentions Meghan's name. You too exist. He doesn't mention any other members of the royal family in his speech. That was a deliberate and a first, I think, attempt by the new King of England, but by Prince Charles, as he was Harry's father. He does not want any more ill will. That message, almost lost in all that information and magnitude, but that message is clear, I would suggest.
So Duncan, a lot of people looked at what the king said in terms of, I'm elevating Prince William and Kate to the Prince and Princess of Wales.
Doesn't matter.
I know, expressing my love for Harry, but you know, next in line to the throne after William is George. Harry is in kind of a parallel line. I mean, disaster would have to befall Prince William's line for Harry to become eligible. So the fact that he mentioned the elevation of the titles for one son but not the other, I mean, we can't really read too much into that, can we? Because there really was nothing for Harry.
Oh, well, look, the royals are, it's really all about the subtleties. And of course, I might be proved spectacularly wrong, but I would state on record what what King Charles is saying about his son is he's acknowledging him. He's not publicly humiliating and he's not ignoring him. Over the Jubilee weekend, Harry and Meghan made a minimal visit, and we don't still know why they flew home in a private jet, potentially before the whole thing had finished. King Charles has a job. One of his first jobs is to sort out this feud between his son and heir William and his son, Prince Harry. But look, Harry and Meghan opted out. They quit as employees, if you like, of the royal family. So it would be completely bizarre, frankly, if King Charles had just stood up and given them another title or another kind of way of referring to them. I think there are some who will be, up until that point, surprised that they've even managed to retain the title of Duke and Duchess of Sussex, given that the feelings towards what they've done, giving interviews about the royals, it's a betrayal in the eyes of the rest of the inner circle of the family. So I think that's a very significant moment, perhaps not the right time, but in the weeks and months down the road, that will tell us a great deal, potentially, about what is to come with, as I say, something that frankly has blighted the Queen's last year and a half, 2 years of her life. That falling out between two brothers who, frankly, although they won't admit it, still love each other to bits.
Okay, thank you very much for joining us. A big day indeed. A live look there at Buckingham Palace where the crowds continue to gather.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.